Blood pooled on the cracked dashboard, my fiancé's cruel accusations echoing in my fading mind. My sister had stolen my life's work, and my family chose her crocodile tears over my hard evidence. Then I blinked. No blood, no wreckage, just my bedroom ceiling, 3 months before the betrayal. This time, I'm not stepping aside. I'm handing her the shovel. Gasping for air, my hands flew to my chest, fully expecting to feel the jagged pierce of shattered windshield glass and twisted metal. Instead, my trembling fingers met the soft, familiar cotton of my pajamas. The rhythmic hum of the city traffic outside my window grounded me. I was in my own bed. I snatched my phone from the oak nightstand. The screen blared the date. Tuesday, October 12th. I dropped the phone as if it burned me. October 12th. Exactly 3 months before the catastrophic Montgomery Gala. 3 months before my younger sister, Savannah, presented my magnum opus as her own, effectively destroying my career, my relationship, and my life. In my previous life, the timeline was a blur of frantic desperation. Savannah, the golden child of the Harrison family, had always coasted on her charm and my parents' endless financial backing. When she landed a junior designer role at Penhaligon Architects, the same prestigious firm where I had bled sweat and tears to become a senior associate, I thought nothing of it. I thought she wanted to learn. I didn't realize she was a parasite looking for a host. She had sneaked into my home office, copied the master files for the Azure Tower project, and used her IT whiz boyfriend to alter the creation metadata. When I stood up at the gala, screaming that she was a thief, I looked like a jealous, hysterical older sister trying to sabotage the young prodigy. My fiancé, Liam Bradley, had looked at me with pure disgust. "I can't believe you'd stoop this low, Chloe," he had spat, wrapping a protective arm around a violently sobbing Savannah. My parents, Robert and Diane, publicly disowned me the next day. The media tore me apart, driving away from a horde of paparazzi, blinded by tears. I didn't see the truck running the red light. But fate, it seemed, had a twisted sense of humor. I was back. The smell of dark roast coffee drifted from the kitchen, breaking my reverie. Liam was here. Savannah was visiting today. The pieces were perfectly aligned on the board, exactly as they had been. But I was no longer a pawn. I walked into the kitchen, pasting a groggy smile on my face. Liam stood by the espresso machine, his crisp white shirt rolled up at the sleeves, looking every bit the handsome corporate lawyer I had loved. Savannah was perched on the granite island, swinging her legs, babbling about a creative block. "Morning, sleepyhead," Liam said, pressing a kiss to my forehead. It took every ounce of my willpower not to flinch. In my mind, I still saw the contempt in his eyes from my dying moments. "Morning," I murmured, pouring a mug. "I was just telling Liam how stressed I am," Savannah sighed, dramatically tossing her perfectly highlighted blonde hair. "Arthur expects me to submit a concept for the Montgomery account by next week." "I'm just a junior. It's too much pressure." Arthur Penhaligon, our CEO, didn't expect a concept from her. She was fishing. In my past life, I had offered to mentor her, showing her my early drafts for the Azure Tower. That was my fatal mistake. "You'll figure it out, Sav," I said mildly, taking a sip of coffee. "You always do." She blinked, clearly thrown by my lack of an immediate rescue offer. "Well, I was hoping maybe I could peek at what you're working on, just for inspiration." "Of course," I smiled, a genuine, terrifyingly calm smile. My laptop is open on the desk. Feel free to browse the folder marked Montgomery Concepts. I'm actually going to scrap most of it today and start fresh. It's a dead end. Her eyes lit up with predatory greed. "Really? You don't mind?" "Not at all. I'm going to take a long shower." I walked away, leaving her to her thievery. Over the next 3 hours, securely locked in my bathroom, I began mapping out my revenge. If Savannah wanted my design, she could have it. But this time, I wasn't just giving her a beautiful building. I was giving her a Trojan horse. The previous Azure Tower was flawless. The new Azure Tower, the files I had spent the early hours of the morning modifying before I even left my bedroom, was a masterclass in engineered sabotage. I had intentionally altered the structural load calculations for the cantilevered terrace on the 45th floor. To the untrained eye, or a junior designer who barely understood AutoCAD, it looked like a breathtaking, gravity-defying architectural marvel. But to Richard Montgomery, who held a PhD in civil engineering before he became a real estate mogul, or to anyone who actually ran the physics simulation, it was a death trap. More importantly, I had embedded a bespoke algorithmic watermark into the digital blueprints. Hidden deep within the coordinate geometry of the foundation grid were my initials and a time-stamped encryption key. When I finally emerged from the shower, Savannah was just closing my laptop, trying to look innocent. "Find any inspiration?" I asked, toweling off my hair. "A little," she chirped, clutching her encrypted USB drive in her pocket. "I think I have a solid direction now. Thanks, Chloe. You're the best sister." "I know," I replied. "I really am." The weeks leading up to the gala were a psychological endurance test. Penhaligon Architects was a hive of frantic energy. The Montgomery account was worth $80 million, and Arthur had made it clear that whoever secured the bid would be made a full partner. Savannah's transformation was nauseating. Armed with my stolen files, she strutted through the glass-walled corridors with the unearned arrogance of a prodigy. She started wearing sharp designer suits, paid for by our mother Diane, who was thrilled her baby girl was finally finding her footing. I played my part perfectly. I submitted a deliberately mediocre, highly conservative proposal for the Montgomery project. It was a safe, boring, brutalist concrete block. When Jessica Mercer, our HR and operations director, reviewed the preliminary submissions, she called me into her office. "Chloe, what is this?" Jessica frowned, tapping her manicured nail against my printed renders. "You're our star associate. This is uninspired. It lacks your usual flair." "I'm burnt out, Jessica," I lied smoothly, forcing my shoulders to slump. "I've been hitting a wall with the Montgomery specs. Honestly, I think I need to step back and let some of the fresh blood take the lead on this one." Jessica sighed, looking disappointed. "Well, it's a shame, because the whispers around the office are that your sister has submitted something revolutionary." I feigned a look of pleasant surprise. "Savannah? Really? That's wonderful. I'm so proud of her." I was practically vibrating with anticipation. Meanwhile, Savannah occasionally needed help maintaining her lie. My sabotage design relied on a fictional proprietary composite material I had dubbed aeroglass in the annotations to justify the insane load-bearing discrepancies. Savannah, having no idea what aeroglass was, cornered me in the break room one afternoon. "Hey, Chloe," she whispered, glancing around to ensure no one was listening. "Quick, hypothetical question. If someone were designing a 40-foot cantilevered glass deck, how would they manage the wind shear load?" I slowly stirred my tea, looking her dead in the eye. "Well, standard tempered glass would shatter under the torsion. You'd have to use something highly specialized, like a carbon-laced polymer composite. Very rare, very expensive, and strictly regulated." She nodded furiously, typing my words verbatim into her phone. She didn't understand the physics. She was just memorizing the script. She was building a house of cards in a hurricane, and she thought she was a master architect. The most painful part of the charade wasn't Savannah. It was Liam. As Savannah's star rose in the firm, Liam's attention shifted. He started dropping by the office for lunch, ostensibly to see me, but he would invariably end up in Savannah's cubicle, laughing at her jokes, buying her coffees, and praising her hidden genius. One evening, I came home to find them on my living room sofa. Savannah had her laptop open, pointing to my stolen 3D renders, while Liam leaned in close, his hand resting casually on the small of her back. "It's just brilliant, Sav," Liam was saying, his voice thick with admiration. "The way the light reflects off the eastern facade. You're going to win this." "Thanks, Liam," she giggled, leaning into his touch. "I just poured my soul into this. It's like the building is a part of me." I stood in the hallway, recording a 10-second video of their intimate posture on my phone before clearing my throat loudly. They sprang apart. Liam had the decency to look slightly guilty, running a hand through his hair. "Chloe! Hey! We were just..." Savannah was showing me her final presentation. "It looks great," I said mildly, dropping my keys in the bowl. I felt nothing. The love I once had for him had died in the wreckage of my past life. Now he was just collateral damage. "Make sure you double-check your load calculations, Savannah. Montgomery is a stickler for structural integrity." "Oh, don't be such a buzzkill, Chloe," Liam snapped defensively, moving to Savannah's side. "She's got it under control. Not everyone is as rigidly obsessed with the math as you are. Some people actually have vision." I smiled, turning toward the kitchen. "You're right, Liam. Vision is everything." A week before the gala, Arthur Penhaligon called a firm-wide meeting in the main conference room. He stood at the head of the long oak table, practically glowing with excitement. "Team," Arthur began, his booming voice echoing off the glass walls. "I have just reviewed the final internal submissions for the Montgomery Azure Tower. While there were many strong entries, one stood out so profoundly, so miraculously, that I have decided it will be the sole focus of our presentation at the gala." Savannah sat 2 chairs down from me, visibly vibrating, biting her lower lip to contain her smug smile. "Savannah Harrison," Arthur announced, gesturing to her. "Your design is nothing short of a masterpiece. It redefines modern urban living. Penhaligon Architects will be backing your design exclusively." The room erupted into applause. Savannah stood up, covering her face with her hands in a pitch-perfect display of humble shock. She hugged Arthur, then turned to look at me, her eyes flashing with a sickening mix of triumph and malice. "I couldn't have done it without the supportive environment here," Savannah said sweetly, projecting her voice for the room. "And of course my big sister Chloe, who showed me that sometimes you have to step aside to let true creativity shine." A few colleagues cast me pitying glances. I just clapped, keeping my expression perfectly serene. That night, my parents hosted a lavish dinner at their Westchester estate to celebrate Savannah's triumph. They poured vintage champagne. My father, Robert, gave a toast about how Savannah was the true heir to the family's legacy of excellence. "We always knew you had a special spark, darling," my mother, Diane, cooed, kissing Savannah's cheek. She then looked at me, a subtle frown lines creasing her forehead. "Chloe, dear, I know it must be hard to see your little sister eclipse you, but you need to be so good sport. Family supports family." "I am supporting her, Mom," I said, raising my crystal flute. I looked directly at Savannah, raising the glass in a mock salute. "I can't wait for everyone to see exactly what Savannah is capable of. I promise you, the gala will be an unforgettable night." Savannah smirked, clinking her glass against mine. "To the future." "To the future," I echoed, taking a slow sip. "Let them drink their champagne. Let them build their pedestals." Because in exactly 7 days, in front of the city's elite, Richard Montgomery was going to tear that pedestal down to the foundation, and I was going to watch Savannah choke on the dust. Crystal chandeliers cast a golden glow over the grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel, illuminating a sea of designer gowns and bespoke tuxedos. The Montgomery Gala was the architectural event of the decade, pulling in heavyweights from across the globe. I spotted prominent real estate moguls, a few city council members, and even Pulitzer-winning architecture critic Paul Goldberger chatting near the ice sculpture. I wore a simple, elegant, emerald green slip dress, intentionally blending into the background. Savannah, however, was dressed like she was preparing to accept an Oscar. She wore a blindingly sequined crimson gown, clinging to Liam's arm as they worked the room. My parents trailed behind them, beaming with an intoxicating mixture of pride and hubris. "Nervous?" Jessica Mercer, our HR director, asked, handing me a glass of sparkling water. She looked genuinely sympathetic. "It's hard watching someone else take the spotlight, especially your own sister." "Not at all, Jessica," I replied, taking a slow sip. "I think tonight is going to be incredibly illuminating for everyone." At exactly 8 o'clock, Arthur Penhaligon tapped his microphone on the main stage. The ambient chatter of the ballroom died down, replaced by a tense, electric anticipation. "Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests, and specifically Mr. Richard Montgomery," Arthur boomed, gesturing to the front table where the billionaire sat. Richard was a notoriously ruthless man in his late 60s, sporting a sharp silver beard and eyes that missed nothing. He had built his empire from the ground up, starting as a civil engineer before becoming a titan of industry. Tonight, Penhaligon Architects is proud to unveil a vision that will redefine the skyline of this great city. A concept so daring, it required the fresh, uninhibited genius of our brightest rising star. Please welcome Savannah Harrison. The applause was thunderous. Savannah practically floated onto the stage, flashing a dazzling practiced smile. She clicked the presenter remote, and the massive LED screens behind her flared to life. There it was, my Azure Tower. Even sabotaged, it was breathtaking. A sleek, twisting spire of glass and steel that seemed to defy gravity, culminating in a massive 40-foot cantilevered terrace jutting out over the city on the 45th floor. Gasps of admiration rippled through the audience. I saw my mother dab a tear from her eye. Liam was grinning like he had designed it himself. The Azure Tower is not just a building. It is a living organism, Savannah began, her voice dripping with rehearsed passion. I wanted to create a synergy between the rigid demands of urban infrastructure and the fluid, unbound nature of human ambition. She spent the next 15 minutes reciting the script she had stolen from my notes, tossing out buzzwords with the confidence of a seasoned veteran. She sounded brilliant. She sounded like me. Thank you, she concluded, bowing slightly as the room erupted into a standing ovation. Arthur Penhaligon rushed the stage to shake her hand, but down at the front table, Richard Montgomery was not clapping. He slowly stood up, adjusting his tailored suit jacket. He picked up a microphone from the centerpiece. The ballroom grew deathly quiet. Miss Harrison. Montgomery's voice was a low, gravelly rumble that commanded absolute authority. A visually stunning presentation, truly. However, I have a few. Technical inquiries regarding the structural integrity of the 45th floor terrace. Savannah's smile faltered for a fraction of a second before she recovered. Of course, Mr. Montgomery. I'd be happy to answer. That cantilevered deck extends 40 feet with zero visible underside support, Montgomery stated, pulling a pair of reading glasses from his breast pocket and looking at a printed rendering. Given the wind shear at that altitude in this specific wind corridor of the city, the torsion load would be catastrophic. The glass and steel would literally rip themselves apart. How did you solve the dynamic load distribution? Sweat beaded on Savannah's forehead. She shot a desperate, fleeting glance at me in the back of the room. I simply raised my glass to her in a silent toast. Well, Savannah stammered, gripping the podium, I utilized a very specific material approach for that section. Standard tempered glass would shatter, obviously. So, I integrated a highly specialized carbon-laced polymer composite. It's called aeroglass. Silence hung in the air. Heavy, suffocating silence. Montgomery stared at her. Then he looked over at a man sitting next to him. Dr. Mitchell Hayes, the chief structural engineer for Montgomery Holdings. Doctor. Hayes let out a sharp, derisive bark of laughter. Aeroglass? Montgomery repeated, his voice dropping an octave, losing all traces of politeness. Miss Harrison, are you standing in front of my investors, my colleagues, and the press, and proposing we build an $80 million skyscraper using a fictional material from a comic book? The crowd murmured, a collective wave of confusion sweeping through the ballroom. Savannah turned pale. I don't understand. It's a highly regulated composite. It does not exist, Montgomery snapped, his patience evaporating. Furthermore, my team ran your preliminary coordinate geometry through our simulation software during your little speech. The foundation grid is completely misaligned. If we built this, the tower would collapse before we reached the 30th floor. This isn't just amateurish, Miss Harrison. It is criminally negligent. Arthur Penhaligon grabbed the microphone, his face flushed with panic. Mr. Montgomery, there must be a misunderstanding. The calculations are a death trap, Montgomery roared. I came here expecting the legendary excellence of Penhaligon Architects. Instead, I am being pitched a shiny coffin by a child playing with crayons. Complete Pandemonium broke out. Cameras flashed as journalists sensed blood in the water. Arthur Penhaligon looked like he was going to have a heart attack. On stage, Savannah was trembling violently. Her facade had completely shattered. The golden child was cornered, and like a trapped rat, she did the only thing she knew how to do. She looked for a scapegoat. "It wasn't me!" She shrieked into the microphone, her voice shrill and hysterical. She pointed a shaking finger directly into the crowd, right at me. "It was Chloe, my sister. She gave me the math. She sabotaged my design because she was jealous I got the project." The entire ballroom turned to look at me. The sea of elite guests parted, leaving me standing alone, bathed in the glow of the chandeliers. My mother gasped, clutching my father's arm. Liam glared at me with that same look of pure disgust I remembered from my past life. "Chloe," Arthur demanded, his voice shaking with fury. "Is this true? Did you intentionally sabotage your sister's work to ruin this firm?" I took a slow, deep breath, smoothing the skirt of my dress. I walked forward, my heels clicking rhythmically against the marble floor. I didn't stop until I reached the front table, standing face to face with Richard Montgomery and the stage. "Mr. Penhaligon," I spoke clearly, projecting my voice so the entire room could hear. "I did not sabotage Savannah's design, because Savannah didn't have a design. She stole mine." "Liar!" Savannah screamed, gripping the podium. Tears were streaming down her face, ruining her makeup. "You're just trying to cover up what you did." "Am I?" I pulled my smartphone from my clutch. "Martin," I called out to the firm's IT director, who was sweating near the AV control desk. "Could you please cast my phone's screen to the main projectors? The Wi-Fi access code is 8842. Martin looked at Arthur, who nodded frantically. A second later, the massive rendering of the Azure Tower vanished, replaced by my phone's display. "You see," I continued, pacing slowly in front of the stage. I knew my sister had a habit of taking things that didn't belong to her. "So, when I began designing the Azure Tower 3 months ago, I embedded a bespoke algorithmic watermark deep into the AutoCAD root files. I tapped my screen, opening a diagnostic application. Lines of code flooded the massive projectors behind Savannah. If you zoom in on the primary foundation grid coordinates, I instructed, you will see a hidden string of alphanumeric text. On the screen, the code highlighted a specific line. It read, author, Chloe Harrison, timestamp, Oct 5, 3:14 a.m., encryption key, stolen, by, Savannah. The ballroom erupted into gasps. Savannah stumbled back from the podium as if she had been physically struck. "The timestamp proves this file was created weeks before Savannah was even assigned to the project," I said coldly, staring up at her. She snuck into my computer, copied the files, and passed them off as her own. But unfortunately for her, she stole the draft files. The ones where I was testing catastrophic failure scenarios in the physics engine. She didn't know enough about architecture to tell the difference between a masterpiece and a programmed demolition. "Chloe, how could you?" Liam shouted, stepping forward from the crowd, his face purple with rage. "You let her go up there! You humiliated her on purpose! You're a sociopath!" I slowly turned to face Liam, my beloved fiancé, the man who had held my sister while she cried over my corpse. "Liam," I said softly, a dark smile playing on my lips. "I'm so glad you chimed in, because you're right. I did let her go up there, but I wasn't the only one who knew she was a fraud." I tapped my screen again. The code vanished, replaced by the crystal clear 10-second video I had recorded in my hallway. The audio echoed through the ballroom speakers. "It's just brilliant, Sav." Liam's voice purred on the recording, his hand caressing her lower back. "The way the light reflects off the eastern facade, you're going to win this." "Thanks, Liam. I just poured my soul into this. It's like the building is a part of me." "You didn't care about the architecture, Liam," I said, my voice echoing in the dead, silent room. "You were just sleeping with the architect. Or, in this case, the thief." Liam's mouth opened and closed like a suffocating fish. He looked around wildly, realizing that every major player in his corporate law sector was in the room, watching his professional and personal reputation evaporate in real time. "Chloe," my mother whispered, stepping forward, her face pale with shock. "Chloe, please. This is family. Stop this." "You chose your family, Mom," I replied, my voice devoid of any emotion. "You chose the golden child. I hope you enjoy the tarnish." I turned back to Richard Montgomery, who was watching the entire spectacle with a look of grim fascination. "Mr. Montgomery," I said, reaching into my clutch and pulling out a sleek black USB drive. "I apologize for the theatricality. My sister stole the flawed blueprints. But here is the finalized, mathematically flawless, structurally sound design for the Azure Tower. The wind shear calculations have been fully optimized using highly reinforced geometric bracing, not aeroglass. I am formally submitting this as an independent architect. I quit Penhaligon." Montgomery took the flash drive, his eyes locking onto mine. He didn't smile, but a glint of profound respect flashed in his cold eyes. "I will have Dr. Hayes review this immediately, Miss Harrison. If it is half as bulletproof as your revenge, you have yourself an $80 million contract." "It is," I promised. I didn't look back as I walked down the center aisle of the ballroom. I didn't look at Savannah, who had collapsed onto the stage, sobbing hysterically while Arthur Penhaligon screamed at her. I didn't look at Liam, who was being actively shunned by his colleagues. I didn't look at my parents, whose elite social standing was crumbling into dust around them. The crisp night air hit my face as I stepped out of the Plaza Hotel. There were no paparazzi chasing me. There were no tears blinding my vision. Just the bright neon pulse of the city skyline, a skyline that I was going to rewrite. Revenge is a dish best served on a silver platter with a side of hard data. Savannah and Liam thought they could play me, but they just built their own graveyard. If you loved watching this fake sister get dismantled by her own lies, smash that like button, share to expose all the toxic people in your life, and subscribe for more epic comeback stories.